Tonight, we're going to talk about the wild woman archetype. The wild woman is starting to become really popular, and maybe one of the first books that really goes into deep is Women Who Run with the Wolves. Uh, what is the wild woman archetype or the wild feminine? The part of us that moves by instinct, like wild animals, like wild nature, the part of us that just knows, that can sense really well and orient itself by scent, by sound, by smell, using the senses. And the reason why we suffer so much nowadays, it's because we have removed ourselves from the wild. And think about the movie Into the Wild. And so many people are going into the wild and wanting to live a life closer to nature because nature is calling us back, because we have distanced ourselves so much that we're causing disharmony on the planet altogether. And in order to restore balance, we need to go back to remembering that we do not dominate nature, but we actually are part of nature. And when we assume our natural role, the whole system begins to run smoothly again. So the wild woman is the part of ourselves that is instinctual and does not care by, for societal rules, regulations, for beliefs, for traditions, for things that are imposed on us from the outside that may not be aligned with our true self, but it wants to follow its natural instincts. And when you pay attention, we are so quick to name everything, define everything, explain everything, and that's not how intuition works. Intuition takes sensory perception, and you get this impulse of this is what I need to do, this is where I need to go. And if you start to second guess that impulse and the mind moves in and starts to temper with the feeling, then we start to overthink, we start to be very doubtful, we start to overanalyze, we start to research how other people have done this thing and how should we do it so it's perfect. And that's where we trip ourselves up, and by the time we come up with a decision, if we actually do, the moment has long passed. We missed that opportunity. The window has closed, and things are entirely different now. So we have to reorient ourselves again. But if we continue to repeat that process, and instead of trusting the feeling and moving from that space of inspired action, we go back into analyzing and uh, thinking, we trip ourselves again. And that's how we stay stuck in cycles and repeat them and are on a loop. Because a lot of times our intuition is going to suggest doing something that is totally out of character, out of norm, out of people's expectations, out of our comfort for sure, out of our level of expertise, out of our anything, that we thought we are. But when we follow that, then we become a new person. And that is the whole point of living and being wild, is to be alive, to be unpredictable, to be so in tune with your environment that as the environment is constantly changing, you're constantly changing and realigning to everything. And in this way, you're continuously harmonized. And this is what we mean by flow. And how can this be achieved? Well, first of all, we definitely need to return to nature and spend a lot of time in nature, in close contact with nature, with the soil, with the wind, with the trees, with the plants, with the sun, with the water. And the more we immerse ourselves in nature, the more we start to harmonize with our own nature through the natural nature of nature. Duh. And then we'll be able to start to hear our intuition more loud and clear, to begin to trust it and take the action steps it's needed. And a lot of times, this process in this modern society requires a lot of deaths and rebirths because we need to allow this old self to die that was more attached to society, to external norms, to laws, to rules, to regulations, to TV, to fake people who are celebrated, to fake values, to empty pleasure. And we need to allow all of that to fall away and all of our parts that were associated with it because that's how we grew up, because that's what was normal around us to die. And when those parts die, naturally, a lot of connections that were based on these parts of us being alive will transmute as well. And if these people are going through a similar process, they may come to your next rebirth with you. But if they're not, they naturally have to stay behind. And it's a process of constant letting go and surrender because you have to surrender to your true nature, through your original essence, to your divine spark, and do what's right and let go what no longer serves. So, like the Tao says, it's a constant process of unlearning actually all of the conditioning that um, was meant to help you become a part of a system and a tribe that does not support your individual expression so much, but feeds somebody else. And you have to let go of the attachment to the tribe, and you have to be willing to walk alone and to trust that there are going to be periods of time where you're very vulnerable because the old shell has fallen away and you're growing into the new one and there's no one around and you feel like a very vulnerable animal and you need to protect yourself and be gentle with yourself and shift your rhythm to something that supports you better. And again, be in nature, allow nature to help you, be around animals, be around people who have done healing themselves and can support you in your vulnerable state. And continue. And when people resist it, that's when it becomes very difficult. And that's when things start crumbling around them in not so good of a way. But if the ego is resisting, then it kind of gets ugly. So, the best way to deal with the natural changes that are currently occurring is to surrender to our wild self, to surrender to that wild feminine nature, and know that our intuition is able to tap into so much more of what is ahead that is invisible. And when we trust it, the path gets lit up like the runways, at an airport. And everybody has their own different runway, and no path is alike. So that's why it's important also to be inspired by other people's original expression and the freedom they embody, because they have embodied more of their wildness and allowed themselves to be different, unique, authentic, and walk their own path boldly that is completely different than everybody else's. But we need to remember that there's no imitation in the wild, there's only uniqueness. And we are carving our path as we walk. And there will be obstacles, there will be mountains that we need to go around, there will be mountains that we need to learn to command to move. There will be a lot of other traps and snares and things that are not pleasant, but also a lot of things that are beautiful openings. Like you're walking through the woods and it's dark and it's scary, and all of a sudden there's this beautiful meadow and the sun is shining, and it feels like, oh wow, I was really meant to come this way. So flowing with the wild feminine is a very unpredictable process of a lot of deaths and rebirths, and a lot of straying from familiar paths, and a lot of letting go, and a lot of goodbyes, and a lot of hellos, and a lot of surprise, because these parts of you that you thought were you, when you allow them to fall away, much beautiful growth appears underneath, which is actually you and has always been you, but has been covered up by artificialness. And a good expression is the makeup, that women cover themselves up, and the flashy clothes. And the pure self doesn't need decoration, honestly. And we can use it just for the fun of it, like playing dress up. Uh, but the pure self is very real. It's stripped of anything artificial, and you can see it in the eyes, you can hear it in the voice. It's just something that is very genuine and pure and completely unique on its own, and so plain and so simple that it appears like a pebble, like a leaf, like a ray of sunshine, like a drop of water. Something that is so common that you can easily overlook it, yet at the same time, it's so extraordinary because it embodies something primal, primordial, essential, wild, natural, free, grounded, spontaneous, alive. The wild feminine is throbbing with life, and at the same time has the sword of death. And in order to continue to recreate ourselves, we need to continue to die to our previous versions of self and embody new ones. And the wild feminine is constantly recreating herself, himself, because we have it in all of us, through combining elements. Imagine right now you're a puzzle of certain pieces, and you decide, you know what, I actually want to rearrange this, and I want to introduce like a little more color here and a little more there. And you constantly have to be unmade and remade, unmade and remade. And that is the fun of it. And like rearranging your pieces until they fit better, until the colors align better, and letting go of some, collecting some new ones, letting go of some, collecting some new ones, rearranging. Imagine it like decorating a house, but the house is your soul. And you take in this song and this quote and this book and this inspirational conversation with this person and this beautiful teaching and this wonderful experience of presence, and all of these things comprise you on the inside, and there are things that you collected while you were carving that unique path in the woods just for yourself. And a lot of these treasures can seem very trivial to somebody else. Like, remember in Emily, where she finds the box of this man's childhood treasures? And they're such random objects. It could be a button or a piece of foil from a chocolate or a pen that you found somewhere, a little pebble, uh, just random, but they mean so much for you because they symbolize an initiation on the path, a deep loss, a gift that was unveiled, a moment of shared silence with someone that can never be retrieved, and there's no other evidence of it or memory except the feeling imprinted in your heart. And this is how the wild self guides us because it's something that is way deeper than anything that we're having at this current experience, but it's tied to all of the ancestors that came before, all of our future timelines that are existing, because past, present, and future are one, and our future self has left clues for our current self, and our past self has left clues for our current self. And it's that ability to pull from the past and from the future and embody the knowing in the present. And that is done only by instinct, only by very focused presence, only by complete awareness and harmony and being completely in tune with the whole, realizing that you're all of it and at the same time you're a separate expression. And it's such an intricate, delicate presence of weaving and paying attention, and when there's a response in your body and something says yes, like this rings true, and how can I gather all these elements from this conversation and this post that I saw and this song that I heard and this poem that I read and put them together into a meaningful cohesive whole, which is what I'm doing. Everything that I'm sharing right now is a culmination of experiences and things that I have read and things that I saw today, and conversations with friends and energy that I picked up from the air. And that is art. That is the creative act. That is the art of living. That is like honoring the sacred and going really deep into it and becoming one with the mystery that is constantly unfolding through us, and getting more and more glimpses of it and being in awe of how intricate it is, and how the more you tap into it, the more you disappear and you just become this vessel for the mystery to express itself. And every time it gives you this piece and that piece, and you see the connection between the pieces, you're in complete awe. The wild feminine is fluent in the subconscious and consciousness in general, which is what unites us. And her heart is open, trusting, courageously, boldly walking into the unknown, knowing that nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal exists. There's love and only love, manifesting in myriads of forms, a kaleidoscope of shapes and visions, colors, smells, scents, beautiful landscapes, internal and external terrains, the road less traveled that leads us to the treasure that we seek, through multiple heroes' journeys into the psyche.